Oh my gosh, hello, and welcome to a special Ineptus Astartes. We are covering the exemplary battle drop with the Corrupted Knights. It's called the Battle for Felweather Keep, and it is an exemplary battle featuring, historically, I guess, fake historically, but you get what I'm saying, House of Ironi and another traitor knight force. And most importantly, though, we are getting our first glimpse at ways to include some Corrupted Knights into the game. So these so-called Dark Blessings are similar to the household upgrades that you can be granting to your standard Questoris household detachments. So let's take a look at the rules as written, and then let's talk about this briefly. So it specifically stated that these are considered an extension or expanded rules for the Divisio Tactica Questoris household list found within the Mechanicum book. Any Lord of War selected as part of a Questoris household detachment may select one, and only one, upgrade from included in these rules, but note that some upgrades are limited to certain units or can only be selected a limited number of times, as noted in their descriptions. Lord of War choice selected from Divisio Tactics Questoris household army to fill a Lord of War detachment slot selected for an army whose primary detachment is not a Questoris household detachment may select a single option from those included here. So great news if you are a person who owns a single knight and sometimes likes to take it as a Lord of War choice with your standard other army, you can corruptify it. You can include one of these upgrades in your traitor force like that. A model with the Loyalist special rule can't have any of these. Any model that has one or more upgrades from the following section gains the traitor special rule if it didn't already have it. And any model within a detachment has any upgrades from the following section. No model in the same army can have a household ranks special rule. Okay, so household ranks are a set of rules that were included in the Mechanicum book, which I have right here. And the household ranks are a similar sort of rule. So household ranks are, that basically says that any Lord of War choice selected as part of a detachment can select one upgrade from these as before, but note that some upgrades are limited in certain ways, or maybe selected only a certain number of times, just as before, okay? So we're just going to jump into the upgrades on the Dark Blessing side, and then we can talk a little bit about how they compare in very light terms. So first off, O1, Conqueror of Worlds. This is an O1, so you're only going to be able to have one of these, which sounds like probably you're going to want it on, well, potentially a Warlord character, but we'll take a look at it. So it's 80 points, so it's not cheap, it's not free. Any model with this upgrade gains the character unit subtype and then increases their weapon skill and ballistic skill characteristic by 1. In addition, if the Questoris household detachment is the primary detachment of the army, then a model with this upgrade must be chosen as the Warlord, and if it's selected as the Warlord, a model with this upgrade automatically gains the following Warlord trait. Any friendly model with the vehicle unit type and the knight unit subtype within 8 inches of the Warlord with this Warlord trait gets to make reactions as per the standard rules, ignoring the usual restrictions for knights and titans. In addition, an army whose Warlord has this trait may make an additional reaction during the opponent's movement phase, so long as the Warlord has not been removed as a casualty. A Porphyrion and Asterius cannot be given this Dark Blessing. So if you're unfamiliar, the restriction that is discussed here, this idea of reactions, knights are only allowed to react towards certain other things. And so they're missing out on a huge portion of the game. By being able to allow units within 8 inches to make reactions per the standard rules, ignoring those restrictions, that's absolutely fantastic. Now, while it says that an Acostus Knight Porphyrion or Asterius can't be given this blessing, it does not say that it cannot benefit from the Master of the Household special. So if you have another knight within 8 inches of your Porphyrion or Asterius blasting away, then you still get that extra reaction sort of thing, which I think is pretty awesome. Interestingly enough, there is another reaction in the standard knights list, which is called Seneschal, which is essentially the same thing. It's still got the O1 restriction. It has an 80-point cost. The biggest difference, the only difference that I can see, is that the reaction you gain is actually in the shooting phase as opposed to the movement phase. Now, I kind of wonder about this. I think maybe if is the shooting phase reaction better, considering the kind of firepower you're likely to have on this. I kind of wonder if this one is perhaps a little bit worse, slightly. But I don't know. What do you think? The next one up is Heedless Slaughter, and I'm not really sure what to make this one. This one's really interesting. A model with this Dark Blessing gains the character unit subtype, and it must reduce its weapon skill and ballistic skill characteristic by -1. In addition, for each model with this Dark Blessing, all models within a single unit made up entirely of models with the Armiger unit subtype selected as part of the same detachment gain Rage 2 for no points. So, I mean, it's free. You're reducing your weapon skill and ballistic skill by 1, but everything else in the detachment, all the armigers, the single armigers get Rage 2 for free. So you need to take a lot of armigers. So, like, putting this on someplace, like, it's a bit of a sacrifice on the knight, but it's making all the armigers that you're taxed, I mean, at least decently better. I mean, the Reaper Chainblade, which is what comes stock on the Warglaive Talon, it's a Strength 9, AP 2, melee, and shred weapon, so you're re-rolling wounds. Having 2 attacks on this thing, 2 extra attacks is not bad. It's only weapon skill 4, but, like, still, like, the ability to help chew through screens just a little bit more efficiently, going from an attack 3 model to an attack 5 model on the charge. Well, 6, I guess, because of the +1 to charge as well. That's pretty good. And like I said, you're going to be taking these probably regardless, whether you take this one or you decide to take the Helverin. But, I mean, because it's required for the Force Organization concept, but still, not bad. The next one up is Malevolent Artifice, and it was at this point. Well, I was at Heedless Slaughter that I kind of suspected, but it was at this point that I realized that we were going to be seeing a rehash of a lot of the demonic organizations and concepts from previous demon books from this edition. Malevolent Artifice is plus 50 points, and at the end of each one of the player's turns in which a model with this upgrade inflicts at least 1 unsaved wound or hull point with a weapon with the melee type, it gains It Will Not Die 6+, until the end of the battle. If the model already has It Will Not Die, it can increase the value of X by 1 up to 4+. So this one, for 50 points, if you cause a wound, okay, then at the end of your turn, you gain a +1 to your It Will Not Die, or you gain 6+. You can continue to upgrade this. So if you live through 3 rounds of combat, or 2 rounds of combat, at the end of that, you're gaining an It Will Not Die 5+. One thing that'd be interesting to take a look at is end of turn abilities. So you roll typically for It Will Not Die at the end of the turn. So like the question would be, do you roll for It Will Not Die before you would gain this rule or after? And that would be maybe something to look at or ask your friends about as you play with. I'm not entirely sure. I still like it quite a bit. Next one is Encroaching Ruin, and this one's pretty decent as well. A model with this upgrade increases its ballistic skill by 1 and gains character subtype and commanding presence. This is 40 points. Armiger Warglaives and Helverins that have at least 1 model within 6 inches of the friendly models of the special rule at the start of a turn increase their movement by 2 until the end of that player turn. Now that is again pretty great. The Warglaive starts at a base movement of 8, so a +2 on that is pretty nice. It's really going to help you scoot across the board. 40 points. It would be something you'd probably want to plan about to make sure that you've got at least a couple of them earning this benefit every turn. But I could see it, I suppose. It's not the flashiest, but there's definitely possibilities here. Next up is Putrid Corruption. In Putrid Corruption, a model with this upgrade must reduce its movement characteristic by 2, and it gains the Unrelenting special rule. This can't be given to a Porphyrion or an Asterius. Unrelenting says that each time a model with this special rule suffers and explodes results on the vehicle damage chart, it loses 1 extra hull point instead of D3, in addition to the hull point it loses for the penetrating hit. Okay, so Putrid Corruption here is 45 points. Now there is already a rule in place called Implacable, and Implacable is available to anyone, and it is a 65 point upgrade. And it says that a model with this upgrade increases its hull points by 1, gains character, and Implacable. And Implacable here says that no attack targeting a model with this special rule may inflict more than a single hull point of damage, including those attacks with the Exoshock special rule. Okay, so 20 points cheaper. It has a drawback of the -2 movement, and it also does not gain you a +1 to your hull points. In addition, I think that Implacable is just flat out better, unless I'm missing something, because no attack can inflict more than a single hull point of damage would seemingly just fully negate those explode results, and you're just hitting 1 hull point. Now, Putrid Corruption is good. The ability to only take one additional hull point, because quite honestly, like a lot of times when you see those super heavies go down, it's because they're chaining multiple explodes together. But, yeah, I think Implacable for 20 points is better. Now, this is one of those situations where, you're going to take a look at the different rules and realize that I think one definitely does edge out the others, but it's important to remember that because of the rule that stipulates if any model in your detachment has one of these rules, then none of the other knights in the detachment can take the household rank perks. So you're stuck with these Dark Blessings, which isn't necessarily so bad, but also when we're making those direct comparison, understand. I mean, we're going to win some and we're going to lose some on that trader side. And I think that the Putrid here, it's not quite as good as the Loyalist version, but it is cheaper, different, but, it's just important to see. Can't win them all. Next one up is Infernal Tempest, and this is only 25 points, and this is going to be our Psyker upgrade. The model gains the Character and Psyker unit sub-rule and the Infernal Rites Psychic Discipline. When making a Psychic check, a model with this upgrade always counts as having a leadership characteristic of 7, regardless of other modifiers. That's not great. 7 is definitely not great. You are just barely more likely to pass than fail, but, it like 50... just over 50% is not reassuring enough for me to bank on. So it points out that you do get the Infernal Rites, but you specifically, like most Psychers, you're gaining Etheric Lightning. You specifically do not gain Etheric Lightning. So you have two abilities. One is Infernal Warding and the other is Imperial Tempest. Infernal Warding is one that's probably more interesting to people, maybe. At the start of any controlling player's turn, a model with this unit may choose to make a Psychic check. If the check is passed, the model with this power gains +1 to their invulnerable save to a maximum of 3+, until the controlling player's next turn. If it's failed, then you suffer perils and gain no benefit. So a +1 to invulnerable saves is really fantastic, but relying on passing a Psychic check to do it is not good at all. Like I said, especially for something that you really can barely, it's barely better than a 4+. So 25 points is pretty cheap, I guess, for this, but you probably can't count on it being up when you really, really want it. So for that sake, I gotta say, meh. Imperial Tempest is a weapon attack, and it's a range 12, strength 5, AP 2, heavy 1, blast 3, guided fire, and psychic focus. So for psychic focus, you also have to pass a leadership test for this, and if it works, then you can toss it out. So heavy 1, 3-inch blast, strength 5, but AP 2. So, AP 2 and Strength 5 means that you're likely to cause some wounds and probably likely to remove some models. The Strength is not big enough to instant kill anything. The range is not impressive enough to really use this at any great distance or whatever. But, it's something. It's also got guided fire, so you don't necessarily have to see what you're shooting at, which is nice. But, again, you still have to pass a check to make this happen. And the benefits are not so supreme that, you're really thinking about risking it. I think this is a pass for me. Infernal Tempest, I believe, is a pass. Ravenous Dissolution. Next one up. This is 50 points. You gain Weapon Skill 1 and Character Subtype, and then also the Marked for Death special rule. The Marked for Death special rule here is exactly the same as it is in the main book. At the start of the battle, once both armies have been set up, including enemies with Infiltrator, you choose a single unit on your opponent's side, and that unit is marked for death. Now, if you have one unit that has the marked for death rule on your side, if you have 10 rules that have the marked for death unit on your side, you still only ever pick one unit. But everybody who has marked for death now gets to reroll all failed wounds of 1. This is actually pretty good. Knights don't get necessarily a ton of dice to throw, and so anything you can do to sort of reroll wounds is pretty excellent. Now, some of the weapons, depending on the knight that you choose to put this on, you might have shred already. So it's less special for those, but definitely for let's say anything with a high number of shots, like a ballistic cannon or something like that. Rerolling ones to wound, it's a nice way to boost your wound count and take those things up. It's not the worst one that I've seen. What's interesting, though, is that it's specifically tied to weapon skill characteristic, adds 1, and not ballistic skill. So if you were going to try to put this onto a ranged unit, you wouldn't necessarily be benefiting from the skill up, but you'd still be getting those reroll ones. I don't know. I'd have to play around with it and take a look at the targets for such a thing. Okay, the next one is absolutely wild. This is Raptor Sensation. It's definitely my favorite on this list just for the silliness of it. and the potential power of it. So Raptor Sensation says that no enemy unit that has one or more models within 8 inches of a model with this Dark Blessing can have a reaction declared for it in any phase, unless that unit's controlling player first passes a leadership test for the unit that they wish to declare a reaction for. If the test is passed, then a reaction may be declared and resolved as normal. If a test is failed, then that unit may not have any reactions declared for it in the current player turn, but the controlling player does not lose a point of their reaction allotment. Okay, this is awesome. So first off, if they fail the test, the unit cannot react for the rest of the turn. Okay, it's for every enemy unit within 8 inches, and they don't lose reaction, so to speak, but they can't react with that unit. All right, why is this so awesome? Well, what's the most important thing in this edition? If you were an Arrested Development fan back in the day, you might have been tempted to say breakfast, but it's not breakfast, it's reactions. Reactions are the most important thing in this edition. They are a unique way for us to interact with our opponent's board on their turn. And so, the ability to do so, or the ability to prevent that or curtail that, is really, really, really damning, really powerful. It doesn't shut off all reactions. Your opponent still has a chance to do this, but the fact that they can't count on the fact that it's going to work means that there's all sorts of ways you can mess with people with this. So one of the common tactics that like I will see people doing, or that I'll do myself, is trying to bait reactions from your opponent. Like maybe I make a big show of trying to deal with a pretty strong scoring unit standing on an objective, and also my opponent has like a last cannon heavy support team. Essentially, I can do a couple different things, you know. The one of those that's dangerous is the last cannon support team. So first thing I do is I target the scoring unit on the objective. I hit it with something. Now my opponent has an opportunity to decide what they want to do. If I'm in a position where I can threaten both units and they have one reaction, they can either choose to react to evade and try to keep their scoring unit on the board, or they can sacrifice the scoring unit and then, you know, go ahead and save the return fire for their last cannon support team. These are really basic tactics. People have been doing this and variations of this in wargaming for a long time, so I'm not explaining anything that's terribly exciting. Now imagine the same basic concept, but on top of that, you're also then throwing in a variation of you're not actually sure if you're going to use that reaction. Now, with Raptor Sensation, and you put this onto the board, right, you can bait them into those similar choices, but not only on top of that do they have to decide which is the most effective use of their reaction, they have to make that plan not knowing whether or not the thing is actually going to go off, which in some ways I think is worse than just shutting it off, because your opponent can just plan for that. They can just know what's going to happen. The uncertainty of it is going to cause even more anxiety, even more stress in that opponent, which is going to really make it really ratchet things up and actually kind of fit the whole theme of like crazy Slanesh temptations and whatever else. I absolutely love the way that this sort of accidentally creates a perfectly lore-friendly sort of concept. I love it. The next up is Formless Distortion, and this is the last one on the list. A model with this upgrade increases its weapon skill by 1 and gains the character unit subtype. In addition, it gains, it has the ability to exchange a weapon with the following for no additional cost. This is 45 points, by the way. An Ionic Lash is Strength 10, AP 2, Melee, Reach 2, and Exoshock 6 up. So no Brutal, which is fine, but Strength 10, AP 2, and Reach 2, so you're getting an additional 2 on your initiative, so you're striking well ahead of a lot of different things. That's pretty great. The ability to put this onto a model and strike first. It even has an Exoshock rating on it, so that it could be even potentially more damaging against, you know, other knights. But Strength 10 means you're going to squish most things. AP 2 means everybody's taking invulnerable saves. This is really, really fun and really awesome. 45 points is a little expensive here, but the +1 weapon skill characteristic is pretty great along with this idea. Now, I want to point out that we had other recent Demon Engine rules come out, and in the last PDF, we already got access to a couple of unique knight models for traders, and that's the Khitan Demon Engine and the Greater Brass Scorpion. Now, I have looked all over the place, and I cannot find any reference or idea that suggests that you cannot include some of these dark blessings on those models as well. So, the Greater Brass Scorpion, with its weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 4, you could use one of these to grant yourself a +1 ballistic skill and be even more effective with your weapons. The Khitan Engine, which has a weapon skill of 6 already, Why don't you give it one of these other ones? Why don't you give it Marked for Death and then have it weapon skill 7 and then pick one unit on the board that the Khitan you just know it wants to delete and get to reroll ones against that. You can take the Khitan engine and give it Malevolent Artifice, although you're going to miss out on that +1 weapon skill that you might get other places. Suddenly giving it Will Not Die, with it continues to sprawl up, and it's going to be killing things in melee combat, so long as it continues to survive. Or how about Encroaching Ruin? It might seem counterintuitive or pointless to give it a +1 to ballistic skill, but, going from ballistic skill 3 to 4 is pretty good with that Gatling cannon. And on top of that, the ability to boost movement of your armigers, get them going around places faster, that's pretty awesome as well. There are tons of options and ways that you can run this now, and just the addition of these additional concepts, some of them are sort of replacements, side grades, but the biggest thing is that there's just more to think about, more to combine, and more choices to make to both personalize your army for lore and otherwise. One thing that I want to note is that we're kind of seeing an increasing, it's a design choice that has been made that might lead to frustrating certain players. So one of the concepts that's going to be, of course, very difficult is that in the lore, both of these sides have all of the same things, but then one side gets magical space powers, right? So through the lore specifically, all of the traitor forces should have all the same stuff, plus they should have, additional upgrades possible. So basically, traders at this point, the way things are going with this, it just seems like they're going to continue to have just more options, better options sometimes, but just more options. And that's got to leave loyalist players feeling a little bit left out perhaps, but I don't care because I'm evil at heart. No, it's not true. I do care. I'm just saying that I'm realizing that this is going to be a complicated sort of thing going forward. And what's interesting altogether, and one of the reasons why this video is only going to be 30 minutes long, is that there's not as much even to talk about, because while we do have some interesting Dark Blessings, we don't have any new war gear here. We don't have rules to upgrade some of the, for example, if they wanted to bring the Chaos Knights from the 40k range into this, they're not necessarily giving us rules to represent all those different models, for those different weapons, I mean. And of course, unless I'm missing something, there is still no way in 2.0 to play any of the Dominus class knights, which is just all about the Questoris Knights. So, come on, GW, when's that going to happen? I can't remember the name of the Dominus style one that has the super 3-pronged flamethrower, but I'll find a way to field a knight that has a harpoon and a giga flamethrower on it. It will make it into some list of mine somehow. The last question in here, I guess, has to be, are these rules worth it? Should they go into your games? So this is going to be a trade-off. The traders do have more options now because you can either choose these Dark Blessings or the standard household ranks. You specifically cannot take just one and mix and match. You cannot mix and match. So you got to choose one or the other. So there are some things to weigh on in one regards. I mean, the Putrid Corruption one is a good example. It's a cool idea, but it is notably worse than its loyalist counterpart. Or I should say household rank counterpart, because you can take both rules in a trader force. You just have to decide which grouping of rules you want to have access to. Finally, some of them seem a little bit overpriced on the trader side. I think some of the ideas are really awesome. I think the Psychic Power, the Tempest Fury, is neat, but the Leadership 7 means it's you're not going to be able to count on it happening. I love the It Will Not Die that scales up, but I think it needs to be a little bit cheaper. 50 points for a rule that, might not ever impact you if you get shot off the board first turn seems not so great. If it started at 6+ and went to 4+, for example, I think that might be better. But regardless, the flavor is good, and the opportunity for modeling these things is good. So overall, I'm pretty happy with these rules. If I had to, like I said, if I had to going back, some of my favorites are, I really do like the Raptor Sensation. I think that's absolutely fantastic. The ability to shut off reactions. As a matter of fact, it would be really fun to throw that on a Kaitan engine, which you're just tossing into the middle of the board, because that would be just really complicated for your opponent to decide what to do about them. Might really add to its survivability. I also really enjoy the malevolent artifice idea of it getting like an it will not die that increases and improves. I want to like Infernal Tempest, but the leadership of 7 just makes it so unreliable that I don't feel like I would ever necessarily see that thing doing well and going well. Some of the other ideas also I like as well. I like the Formless Distortion for the Ionic Lash or whatever. That weapon's just not quite as great as some of the other weapons, although it's probably better on your standard Questoris Knights, but we will just have to see how that moves forward. Anyway, I mean, more rules are better, and more options are better for the game, in my opinion. And then also there's the fact that, you know, some of these things have models and kits, some of them don't, so we get a chance to kit bash and do some of that fun stuff ourselves. It's just been a few hours since this thing was released, and by the way, May and the other Battlescribe volunteers, I'm sure, who help keep Battlescribe working for us Horus Heresy players, appear to have already patched these notes into the app, which is unreal and awesome. Thanks, May and others. What do you think about it? Let me know. Drop some comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tip the channel, and check back here for more 30K content. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourselves. See you soon.